And so, Reynald let him know that he would have not been in that forest, if not that he did not have any choice, and since he also saw the young guy in that forest too, he did not worry anymore. They saw so many raspberries which they plucked. They were already stressed out by the time they were done. So Reynald appreciated the young guy for helping him, as that day was a hot one. The young guy tried for him. Therefore, he refused to give the guy some water from his bottle, as a sign of appreciation, but the guy refused at first, insisting that he was fine. However, Reynald knew that he was not, as he could obviously see that the guy was an odd one, and that made him wonder how that guy would live in the forest. Due to what Reynald said, it made the guy feel uncomfortable as he suddenly grabbed the bottle of water and drank it without hesitating. While he was drinking it, Reynald now asked to confirm if he really was not a human. The guy could not give an answer as he wondered why Reynald would ask such a question from him. And immediately Reynald saw that he was uncomfortable. He quickly apologized for asking him that question, as he clarified himself that he was not asking it for a bad thing though. Just that he wondered how he lived in that scary forest, because it makes it look as if the guy was a forest-dwelling fairy. Since Reynald has made up such stories for his little sister before, about fairies, monsters, and all that. As the guy saw Reynald mentioning fairies, he decided to differentiate between fairies and monsters for him, as he wanted to use himself as an example, but suddenly keep his mouth shut, because he wants it to remain a secret. And as Reynald observed him, he told him not to bother himself, that he did not actually mean it, just talking only. Reynald then stood up to take his leave, but handed over a bag full of berries to the guy to share with his friends in the forest, as a sign of appreciation for helping him that day from getting attacked by wild animals. He actually did that for him, because he wants to be borrowing that berry spot in the forest henceforth, for plucking of the berries. And he also asked the guy for a favor, that he should help him and his family from getting hurt, as he knew that the guy has the power. He also appreciated the guy for not having him and his family lack food, because the berries were surplus for him and his family, which provides daily bread for them. Reynald then went home, and on getting home, they were seen as they already prepared food. Then Reynald asked them all to start eating, but they first thanked him for the food. The young girl who was with them asked him if he was able to get many berries that day because the food was surplus, and he rolled what he did. So he decided to share with them how his day went when he went to pluck the berries. He narrated how he met the young guy, whom he referred to as a fairy, in the forest that day, and he also explained how he met the young boy, who showed him the way to pluck many berries, where he went to, and while he was trying to find his way, that was when the young guy came in who helped him. The kids were all surprised when he made mention of meeting a fairy. They were so interested that his little sister asked him to tell her about how the fairy looked. Then he began narrating, putting some exaggeration to make it look like an interesting story, and they all ate thereafter. The next day, before the day became very bright, very early in the morning, Reynald went to the forest again. This time he noticed that the forest was super dark differently in the morning, which made him reason that maybe it was due to the fact that he got up early. However, while going in the forest, he suddenly saw some signs, which were kind of weird, that made the forest look scary to him. But later in some part of the forest, he could see the sun rise there, which made him think that that was the prettiest part of the forest. Then he walked towards where he wanted to pluck berries. On getting there, he expected the fairy to come out just as usual, but unfortunately, instead of the fairy, a wolf appeared, intending to consume Reynald whole alive. Reynald already fell down out of shock, started calling it for help, and fortunately for him, the fairy arrived who saved him as he stood before the wolf, so it would not kill Reynald again. Although the fairy knew that he had blocked with the wolf's meal, which was Reynald, but he let the wolf know that he cannot kill Reynald, although he has to beg the wolf, in which the wolf agreed as he just leave. But the fairy promised the wolf that he would repay that favor it did to him by not killing Reynald, because he didn't expect that it will turn back. Then the fairy asked if Reynald was okay. Reynald then replied to the guy that he is fine, as he even thought that it was the guy who was hurt. But the guy replied that he is also fine, as he asked Reynald not to worry. However, Reynald insisted that the fairy is badly hurt and needs to take care of himself, and the fairy also insisted, swearing that he really meant it, that he was not hurt, since he is not a human, so what happened means nothing to them. Despite all that clarification, Reynald still felt bad for the young guy getting hurt because of him. Meanwhile, Reynald also thought there was nothing to be afraid of, but he actually thinks of his little sister, which made him so scared that he would die. Therefore, Rayback asked the guy to tell him his name, as he claimed that he would never forget the guy's favor, as he held tight to the guy's hand, signaling the beginning of friendship. As Reynald shakes him, the guy realized that Reynald's hands were covered in cuts and bruises, as he was undeniably struggling for his existence. However, he let Reynald know that he had not done any wrong, and that he wants to help the current Reynald. The young guy happened to be Lord Dark Lessa, as he introduced himself to Reynald. So Reynald promised to always remember the name, as he also made Lessa know that it was a blessing for him to meet someone like him, because of how kind he was. Reynald had vowed not to forget the name Lessa again in his life, but later it seemed to him that his promise would have to change. Just then, Reynald woke up, regretting how he spent his past life, as he did not want to remember what he did back then again. Now he could see the good thing when humans could not remember their past lives. Rabiel was not even there when he eventually woke up, because he was getting embarrassed of how he spent his past life. So when Rabiel eventually noticed with the way he was soliloquizing. Since Reynald had woke up, Rabiel knew that the apostles would have seen what was in his head by then, from his conversation with Luciel to his past life memories, just that Rabiel could not see anything again on his own, as he did not wear the white crown anymore. So he just decided to ask Reynald to tell him why he stabbed Lessa in the back. However, Reynald was somehow guilty of telling Rabiel, so he did not want to tell him. Instead, he only let him know that it was his problem that he had taken off the white crown. Whereas, Rabiel was actually with Lessa in Reynald's childhood before Lessa became a god or formed any beliefs back then, as Lessa was just a goat back then. So he wondered why he got angry just because he asked him to explain something. Rabiel knew that there was no vessel purer than an animal, but Lessa was a special born. He was not only a pure vessel, but he was still overflowing with sheer virtue, which was a radiant virtue as white as snow, whereby Lessa in his goat form would sometimes tell Rabiel back then about his wrongdoings, which was so far from the cruelty committed by humans, and as Rabiel has always thought about it, he knew that Lessa was a good person who would not have made Reynald suffer anyway, so he was eager to know what triggered Reynald to do such. Reynald then explained that one day he invited Lessa to his home, and it was the day Lessa died, around afternoon. Actually, that day Reynald went out to get some groceries, and before he got back home, Lessa already got to his house. And on getting home, he met Lessa and some wolves. He wondered what could have happened. Then he remembered Lessa telling the wolf back then that day that he would do his favor of sparing Lessa's life. Therefore that day, Lessa let Reynald know that he had to repay the wolf's favor, so his little sister was torn into pieces by the wolves. He could not pull himself together when he was remembering those things, as he remembered Luciel's words, that he was able to meet Lessa both because of being speaking, but because Luciel chose Reynald's little sister, Barry. At this point, Rabiel already knew that it was Luciel's doing, that Reynald could not think straight again, because Luciel actually knows how to mess with humans' conscious. Of course, Reynald's past life, dying had no choice. Then Rabiel let Reynald know that he was not actually blaming, just that he was clarifying things. He wants to know how Lessa does behave to humans. But Rabiel knew that if Reynald was to explore Lord Lessa's goodwill for humanity, he wondered how Reynald would be different from Ares. Plus the fact that Reynald does not know whether Lessa knew the truth behind the incident from back then. So now Rabiel wants to know what Reynald was doing if he would fight by Lessa's side for Lessa to forgive him. However, Reynald replied that he was not going to do that, as he does not care if Lessa forgives him or not, but he wants to be sure if Rabiel wants to know what he wants from Lessa in particular. Therefore, what he wants from Lessa was that he wants Lessa to stop sacrificing himself for any deed, making it look like everything was Lessa's fault. Reynald does feel bad for that. To the extent that Reynald did not even care if Lessa took everything from him, he would still not hate him. At one point, Reynald began realizing how Lessa's stupid face later became expressionless, which made him make up his mind that if he can save the world, then he is ready to give Lessa life. With everything being said by Reynald, Rabiel could not object to any, because he seemed to be fine with them. Just that he would notice that Reynald's desire for Lord Lessa is to possess something ordinary, and as expected, Rabiel's feelings are not so different from Reinald either, whereby he considered that to be of Lessa's strength. Rabiel did not pity Lessa just like Reinald had done. And that sounds confusing to Reinald, which Rabiel said he would explain lore about to him, so he urged Reinald to just continue helping Lessa, as he made Reinald understand the fact why Ra turned his back on Lessa, which was because of Lessa's abundant grace. Moreover, he knew that Reinald cannot accomplish everything by himself after all, and even Lessa cannot as well. But he let Reinald know that if those were his true intentions, goals and feelings, then Reinald needs to grow strong, to surpass Michael, the deputy of God. Lucia was seen again, with his subjects, Shed and Soreth, as he let Shed know that Soreth's durability has not been equilibrated, so he asked if there was nothing more that Shed can do again. But Shed replied that Soreth is not weak, but that was happening because he was stupid. Actually, Lucia was angry because Soreth could not win over Rabiel, whom he considered as just an ordinary angel. That made Lucia feel ridiculed. However, Shed let Lucia know he and Soreth do eat each other, which means that they did not hear each other. Lucia quickly told Shed not to talk about it again, as he let them know that if they did not act properly, then everything would be in vain. Therefore he told them to make sure they follow their deal accordingly. So he asked Shed to use his power to restore Soreth. Shockingly, instead of Shed restoring Soreth, he rather wants to kill Lucia, which Lucia quickly gets, as he wondered why Shed would want to do that. But he let Shed know that if he did that, he would rot in the void for the rest of his life. However, Shed replied to Lucia without fear, letting Lucia know that he is not a king, and therefore he cannot command him. All that he is doing for Lucia is just that he is merely helping him. And he wondered why Lucia was so impatient. Therefore, he made Lucia understand that he has to let him out of the Dark King's belly, and then out the world. It was then that he could allow Lucia to turn the world upside down as he liked. But Lucia made Shed realize that it was through Ra's death that the power of light already diminished a great deal, so he asked if Shed would be able to handle the smaller weight of light once the angels enter the void, and she replied that he will, since that is easy for him. So he strategized with Lucia that he would make the winged creatures he made himself to carry as much weight as an angel. Thereafter they would kill the angels together with winged creatures' help. Now he Lucia to give the creatures names. Lucia was concerned with how strong the creatures are, but Shed has no clue about that. Instead he just moves on to fix Soreth. Lucia was observing Shed, as it shows on his face that he did not trust Shed. He now understands in his mind why Lord Ra set up rules and regulations, which must be because of Shed, who has been able to create things. Lucia was not happy with Shed being able to create things, but he had no choice rather than to work with them, so he decided to give the creatures a look. Moreover, it was Lord Ra who made the first creation, after Dark Lessa, even before the angels were born, whereby Ra was said to have set the moon into the sky for Shed, instead of Ra marking Shed as a failure, which made Lucia think that Ra must have managed to appease Lord Dark Lessa's hunger by simply stuffing him into the void. They eventually got to where the creations were, and when Lucio saw them, he wondered what kind of named humans would give to them. Lessa was seen as he was trying to calm Curly and Reinald down, as they were both fighting over Dr. Mina. Actually, it was Curly who started it, and Reinald felt like it was not good for him to behave that way, so Lessa tried to stop them from fighting. But they did not. They continued arguing, and that made Lessa felt like he was the one at fault, thinking that the fight all happened because of him. While they were still fighting, Che at the hospital, who had been looking at them, decided to call their attention, and that made them stop fighting. Che then understood that there was really no need for them fighting, as he has been studying them for a while now. Then he turned back from talking to them. Since they already stopped the fight, he then faced the people he was talking to before. He asked them if there was anyone else that wanted to become human among those people, as they were demons and not humans. But no one among those people signified or showed interest in becoming a human. So he turned back, asking those fighting earlier why they were actually arguing when no one was really interested in becoming a human. Everyone was shocked, even Lessa was, as they did not expect that those demon children would not be interested in becoming human. One of the demons asked the others if there is anyone that wanted to become human again, to which no one stepped out. He then asked them about who exactly they were talking about to turn back. One of them felt that the demon who asked the question is probably just suffering from reaching a puberty stage. He got angry when he heard him ask the lady about what she knows about him, to which the man stepped him and stopped him. The man then asked Lessa if this is really the best idea and if he is okay even though these demons are just kids yet. He then replied that she has brought him young demons who haven't done any wrong, and he could only gather as many as he could so no one would be left alone. Lessa then talked to the demons that the power was never meant for them as they still have the chance to return. The young demand then retorted, asking Lessa why is he preaching to them since he can't even do anything not. He claimed that the powers is his and no one else. He then asked if Lessa wants to become a believer, then he might just take him to the balloon seller if Lessa tried crawling between his legs. He got slapped by another demon, a third-generation pentahorn who was the balloon seller. The young demon then asked why he's here since it was his balloon that he bought, to which the balloon seller claimed that he cannot remember something like that, and that the one who made them is Lessa, who he referred to as God that appears in the Bible. The young demon was shocked when he got to know that is Lessa, and also pointed at the woman demand who was with the human that she is also a third-generation pentahorn, asking the young demon to act accordingly. The woman demon and others were shocked that there are indeed two third-generation pentahorn. He then informed them that he couldn't care less for the reasons he became demons, however the world they know is no more because Ares is dead, and that if they don't listen, then they would also become a thing of the past, and should be thankful that God was at their side at the end of the era. The woman demon and the man were later seen at the corridor discussing the young demons that were brought, into which he wondered if Lucy is still alive according to what Lessa said, and that about him being the test subject for the experiment. It's not that she is not scared or sincere, but it was for Lucy, as she wants to see the day where Lucy lives happily and returns to a normal life as soon as possible. The man then said that he wants to help Rhino for the same reason and that he does not want to sacrifice her for that. The young demon who almost disagreed earlier, called Steve, was seen as he wanted to leave by himself but was being advised by the other demand who claimed that if Steve gets caught by the third-generation pentahorn then it's over for him. Steve then claimed that there is nothing like that. It's just an excuse Ares made up in order to manipulate people so he won't be fooled by something like that. And if that sort of God was an evil God in the beginning, then there's no need to trust him anyway. Steve then added that it's better Ares is dead so there won't be anyone to keep them from doing whatever they want, to which he leaped out of the building, to which he was followed by the other demon. At that moment, everyone saw a huge rip with red light on the sky. Steve and the other demon were taken aback when they witnessed a tear in the sky, which was followed by the appearance of something that resembled a large dog flying above them and crashing towards them. They were able to avoid it by avoiding it very instantly. On the other hand, they were so terrified of this thing that it opened its lips and asked them to give it their flesh and voice. During that moment, the other demon had decided to flee, only to later come to the realization that he had abandoned Steve. Therefore, he made a hasty return with the expectations that Steve would still be alive. Following his hasty return, he came face to face with Steve, who was rooted to the ground. He then apologized to Steve for leaving him behind since he was so terrified. Afterwards, he came to the realization that Steve had been possessed by the being who asserted that his name is Zazel and inquired about the location of the angels. However, the second demon attempted to approach Steve in an effort to retrieve him. However, the possessed Steve, who was known as Zazel, turned around to stare at the demon, which caused the demon to flinch in horror. While in a different location, Dark Lessa was observed with Lucy, who inquired about her whereabouts. Following that, Dark Lessa responded by saying that they are currently residing within her dream. Lucy then stated that because Dark Lessa is the deity of death, she was curious about who exactly she is. In response, Dark Lessa stated that she is not interested in naming herself or anything because she only exists to transform everything into ashes, because this is the fate that they are born with. After that, Dark Lessa asserted that she would not spare even a single particle of dust till the moment she passed away. Lucy continued by saying that they ought to spend eternity together, to which Dark Lessa responded by stating that it is inconceivable that she is no longer alive. Dark Lessa comforted Lucy and urged her to give her the response that she would send her to the place she desires.